Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
National interest this week talks about a Varanasi court order allowing or asking the Archaeological Survey of India to carry out a study of the Gyanvapi mosque site to check if they can establish that there was a temple there. This is in response to a civil suit filed by a devotee who said that my holy temple, the Shivalinga, was located here. This is one of my Jyotirlingas, and because I can't pray there, my rights are being denied to me. Now, this has done something very surprising and very intriguing, because when Supreme Court gave its order on Ayodhya, giving the Ayodhya Babri site to the Hindus, giving the Muslims another 5 acres elsewhere, essentially saying that they were settling it like a land dispute, giving the site to the Hindus, giving another site to the Muslims, but at the same time saying again and again and again that this was the only such exception possible because there was a law passed in 1991 by National Parliament solemnly. That law said that every place of worship in India will be protected and preserved as it was inherited on 15th of August 1947. And the court said in that order, 5-judge bench it was, unanimous order, and actually a very well written judgment. You can see more details on this on episode 312 of Katta Clutter, of which I will share a link with you. Now, the court said that we are making an exception in case of Ayodhya because even in the law passed in 1991, there was an exception made only for Ayodhya because it was already an ongoing dispute. So that law said that all sites except Ayodhya, which decisions will be taken in the course of time. They didn't know that Supreme Court will take that decision. So whether it was a political decision or administrative, executive decision or a court decision or legislative decision, they left that one issue open. Everything else was closed. And we thought, people like me also, I also wrote about it and talked about this. Many of us thought optimistically that this now closes all other issues. All right, this is not a solution or this is not a judgment that everybody is happy with. This is not a judgment everybody finds perfect, that people have complained, particularly on the Muslim side. There were complaints, but it looked like everybody had accepted this because it had come from the Supreme Court of India. Supreme Court of India still carries that much respect. So Muslim organizations, some talked about filing a review, but again a review in the Supreme Court itself. Other organizations took over the land for the mosque and actually started the process of building a new mosque there as well. In fact, the designs that you see are quite impressive. Now, at the same time, on the Hindu side, you found that the chief of the RSS, Mohan Bhagwat, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, and also Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who spoke to the nation, made very solemn points saying that this was it, let's now move on from here. The message from everybody was, let's move on from here. Thank you very much, Supreme Court. You've settled this dispute. Now, why were people like us, we are also Gota political analysts. So we don't take politicians or leaders of any religion or sect or any faith on face value. But we still tend to trust the courts more because after all, it was the Supreme Court of India which protected India's constitution during the emergency and after, with all their flaws. They did a lot of things that where they did not pass the test of the constitution or their high office, but they still gave us that one judgment that said that no constitutional amendment by parliament can change the basic structure of our constitution. They said, first of all, the constitution has a basic structure. This is the basic structure, and no amendment of parliament can change that basic structure. So that circumscribed the powers of the parliament, the power of the legislature in making changes in the constitution, and that has been held so far. And we thought that in this judgment, the judges had gone so far out of way to make the same point that it would not be possible to reopen other issues, because we remember that while the Ayodhya agitation was going on, or Ayodhya Babri dispute was going on for more than 3 decades, there were other slogans. There was one slogan, popular slogans. ये तो केवल झांकी है, काशी मथुरा बाकी है. That this is just like a trailer. Now the big ones, two more have to come, which is Varanasi, Kashi, and Mathura. Kashi is one of the holiest shrines or temples of Lord Shiva. It's one of the Jyotirlingas of Hinduism. Kashi is also the holiest city in Hinduism and the oldest, but also Mathura, which is the birthplace of Lord Krishna. In both those places, temples and mosques stand cheek by jowl, and there are controversies that those mosques were built after demolishing temples during the Mughal rule. At least that is the belief on the Hindu side, very widely held. But with this judgment, the Supreme Court, we were optimistic that with this judgment, the Supreme Court had buried these cases, because one slogan was, ये तो केवल झांकी है, काशी मथुरा बाकी है. The other follow-up slogan was, तीन नहीं है 3,000, which means first we do Ayodhya, then we do these two, that is 3, and then there are 3,000 more. Because India has had a very messy medieval past. Most countries have had a medieval past, but India in particular, because of the history of invasions, the history of people coming from outside, from various parts of the world, settling down in India, then followed by colonization by the British. India has had a very violent, very troubled, very colorful, very productive also, but very difficult medieval history, nearly for 700 to 800 years. Now, if you start digging all that out, you will be in trouble. You will be, if you are driving ahead on an expressway with lots of other vehicles, which is the way the world is right now, it's competitive. And if you are only driving, looking at the rear view mirror and not looking at the windscreen, you are bound to make a mistake and bump into something that will hurt you. So, what did we take heart from? We took heart from the fact that the Supreme Court had said a bunch of things in their judgment. In the article, I talk about these in some detail, but basically, the Supreme Court said that one, that all religious places must be protected as independent India inherited them on 15th August 1947, with the exception of the dispute over Ayodhya. This is as provided in the Places of Worship Act passed in 1991. So I will read some passages for you. In fact, I have said that if you ask me to write an editorial on this on this court order in Varanasi by Judge Ashutosh Tiwari, instead of writing a whole standalone editorial, I will just plagiarize passages from this 5-judge Supreme Court judgment. So this Supreme Court judgment says, for example, it says that non-retrogression, which means gade murde ukhadna or going back in time, non-retrogression is a foundational feature of the fundamental principles of the Constitution. Mark these words very carefully, of which secularism is one. So, non-retrogression, foundational feature, fundamental feature, Constitution, and secularism. All these 4 things in one sentence. And then they go on to say, in case you are left with any doubts, and I'm again quoting, non-retrogression is an essential feature of our secular values. Our Constitution speaks to our history and the future of our nation. While we should be cognizant of the history, we need to confront it and move on. Once again, it's the same question. Gade murde mat ukhadiye. What is gone. Learn from it, remember it, and move on. This is not the time to take revenge for the past or to settle scores for the past. And then the judges go on to say, to pick up the thread again from Places of Worship Act of 1991, to say that, quote, Parliament has mandated in no uncertain terms that history and its wrongs will not be used to oppress the present or the future. So हमारे बाप दादा परदादा के परदादा को जो हुआ उसका बदला, we should not take revenge for what happened to our great parents. We should not take revenge on that, for that, on our future generations or future generations of other communities, because this is not a blood feud. People in a sovereign, democratic, constitutional state don't carry blood feuds inherited from many generations or many centuries ago. So three essential elements came out of the judgment. First was that there is this Places of Worship Act that should be respected, and no other place of worship should be disturbed except one that was kept open, Ayodhya, on which the court had itself ruled. Second, even if a future parliament, and if its wisdom, because ultimately in democracy, majority rules. So even if a future parliament, in its wisdom, decides to repeal this law, this Places of Worship Act, or amend it in a way that you could open up the disputes over other religious places, the court has already said that the spirit of this law is located in the essential, foundational, or thereby basic features of the Constitution. So, secularism is in the basic features of the Constitution. This law is essential to India's secular constitutional commitment. So, even if you amended this law, this will be unconstitutional. It will be violative of the basic principles of the Constitution. So, the judges, we thought, had very wisely placed this order in the basic structure of the Constitution, and once again wedded the basic structure and secularism and this law protection of all other places of worship together. And then the court, the third, which was the editorial point the court made, in the sense that this was the court's intention, and there is no doubt about this, that was that it was a call to the nation from them, government, political parties, religious groups, everybody to move on from the past. As grievances of the past, however deeply felt, could not hold the present and the future to ransom. So at this point, we had thought that this is it, now nothing else can be opened up. In fact, RSS chief was asked at that time that what about Kashi and Mathura? So he said, none of that is in dispute right now. And other people on the Hindu side also said that every particular case has its own context. So we are not going there. So there was an expectation that other things will not be opened up. But now it looks like this order has changed the picture, because if Varanasi starts now, this has come just a short while after another suit has been filed in a court in Mathura as well. So several questions now arise. First of all, we know that this order of Varanasi court is in violation of Places of Worship Act. So obviously either the judge has not read that, or the judge has not read the Supreme Court judgment, or he does not draw the same inference from that we have drawn. And in which case I think he'll be wrong, and any higher court, especially a high court, will reject this order, will dismiss this order. But even if that happens, many questions arise. First of all, how did this case suddenly lit up in Varanasi now that construction of the temple has started and next year is the election in Uttar Pradesh? Remember, all three sites, Ayodhya, Varanasi, Kashi and Mathura, are in Uttar Pradesh. Number two, next point. Was this suit filed in Mathura done in conjunction with what is happening in Varanasi? If so, and if there was a common intention, did it have blessings from leaders of higher up in the BJP, RSS, VHP? And if that is the case, and if their intention is not to be bound by the judgment of the Supreme Court of India that Ayodhya was the last, no other shrine will be opened up now, if that is their intention, how would they stop? Will they stop even if a higher court strikes down this Varanasi court's order? Because there is nothing to stop them then from following the course of the Ayodhya movement. They've choreographed it, they can do it again. In fact, the last one took 200 years. Now it may not take 200 years also. And also because they have political power. They have the majority. They have the majority to make laws, to repeal laws, to amend the constitution. And we've also seen that institutions increasingly have been less than willing to stand up to the demands of what they see as the majority. So majoritarianism right now is stronger than it's ever been in India's history. In this situation, why would these forces stop? Now, once the majority decides that you can resume the warfare or unsettled wars or wars that you think did not end to your satisfaction in the 16th century, and you can resume those now in 21st century, unmindful of the consequences, there is nothing to stop it. Just that, in my view, my editorial view, this will be an invitation to disaster. This will hold the future of our coming generations to ransom. Now, history is never to be taken lightly. That's why history is taught so extensively. And that's how history is so politicized. And that's why the teaching and understanding of history is so political as well. Nothing is so sharply divided between left and right, not even economics, as history in so many ways. Still, you can't keep looking at the past and taking decisions for the future. As I had said early on, you cannot drive on a highway without looking ahead, but looking only at the rear view mirror, because you are bound to go wrong then and cause damage to yourself and other people also in your way. One of the most quoted passages from Tom Friedman's book, The World is Flat, is on which countries, companies, and organizations are likely to do well or progress given the relative balance of their dreams and their memories. Let me elaborate it to you by quoting Tom Friedman's exact lines. Tom Friedman says, "One thing that tells me a company is in trouble is when they tell me how good they were in the past. Same with countries. You don't want to forget your identity. I am glad that you were great in the 14th century. But that was then, and this is now. When memories exceed dreams, the end is near." The hallmark of a truly successful organization is the willingness to abandon what made it successful and start fresh. Similarly, a hallmark of a great nation is also in forgetting, I'm adding that, in what you did not do right or what you were unsuccessful with, and move ahead. So, Friedman goes on to say, in societies that have more memories than dreams, too many people are spending too many days looking backward. They see dignity, affirmation, and self worth not by mining the present, but by chewing on the past. And even that is usually not a real past, but an imagined and adorned past. Indeed, such societies focus all their imagination on making that imagined past even more beautiful than it ever was. Sone ki chidiya, than it ever was. And then they cling to it rather than imagining a better future and acting on that or working on it. Now, this is what Friedman says, but I can also quote for you the more familiar lines from Bob Dylan, because I'm sure generations know Blowing in the Wind. And remember those lines that said, "And how many years must one man have before he can hear people cry? Yes, and how many deaths will it take till he knows that too many people have died?" So too many people died in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 14th, 13th, 12th century for the wrong reasons. There is no point to resume that fighting now. It is important, on the other hand, to look at the future and move ahead, and that is done by following that Supreme Court judgment in its spirit and junking this Varanasi High Court order.